Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Amazing Race Rewind podcast, the podcast where we rewind back in time to watch the earliest seasons of the Amazing Race for the first time. My name is Andrew,
And I'm Jill.
and we're here to talk about season 1, episode 10. Although I'm not sure how much there is to talk about because to me this was just a giant cricket.
I think the listeners are in for a little mini episode here. I don't think it's going to be very long. I think it's going to be the facts and nothing else because there really was not much else.
Yeah,
Um,
boring.
but
Yawn,
but it's important in the race, I guess, nonetheless. Is it even
lazy.
really?
What do you say?
What did you say?
I was just quoting Abby Lee Miller.
What I was just saying that it's going to be about the facts and nothing else because there is nothing else. But then I kind of said, oh, well, but it's still important to the race. But honestly, is it? Would the race have been any different had this episode not happened?
See, yeah, I feel like they needed to keep it in just to like make it make sense of how Joe and Bill and Kevin and Drew got so far behind because of the hours of operations thing. But I wish we could just cut this episode. I didn't want to watch it. It didn't even feel like a real episode to me.
It didn't. It felt like a fever dream.
It felt like a bonus episode that they gave up on halfway through editing and would be included in like the special DVD edition of The Amazing Race season 1, that they would advertise as like a bonus portion to
And
get
it's
you
just not a good
and buy
bonus.
more copies. Yeah, there was no competitiveness, no drama, no fun, no suspense. It was people that they were just racing like robots. Although like Thailand was cool.
The scenery was absolutely gorgeous. I will say that. And the tasks were interesting and the scenery, yeah, was beautiful. But unfortunately, the racers' drama did not match up.
Yeah, there was no drama. It was very linear. Everybody just did their own thing.
They did it well. Nobody struggled. There were no travel issues, nothing.
Yeah. And I feel like as is, the last part of the season, last few episodes of the season are a little bit slower anyway, because you have fewer teams, so it's less variability, I suppose. But I think because these last few legs have been stretched so far with all these non-elimination legs so late into the game that it's
It's
just,
just kind of painful at this point.
yeah. And I think this was even perpetuated further by there being two races going on. So yeah, there's
Yes.
Frank and Margarita and Robin Brennan in one group, and then they pretty much finish the race, and then we move on to part two, which is Team Guido and then Kevin and Drew.
The episode literally is part one and part two. And for that reason, as you said, there's no suspense. Well, there is a little bit in the end, but we'll get to that in a moment.
But not even because it's an all non-elimination, so there's no payoff.
But you do kind of have that feeling that it is a non-elimination round. So even though there is that race between the two teams in the back, you don't feel as much anxiety as you would if you kind of knew there was no non-elimination rounds left.
Yeah, and on that note of non-eliminations, we're like talking about how in the past non-elimination legs where teams weren't reactive to the non-eliminations or didn't give any reaction. I was reading an interview from Kevin and Drew from way back in 2001 where they were saying that at the first route info, every leg there would be a warning saying the last team will be eliminated, except for non-elimination legs. So they were able to figure out that if it didn't have that, it was a non-elimination leg. So
So
teams, yeah,
they weren't told, but they kind of all caught on to that, is what you're saying?
yeah.
Oh, I see.
So that makes a lot of sense of how there was no reaction whatsoever to the non-elimination, and probably why this leg seems so lackluster as well.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should get into it then. I mean, there's honestly, like I said, a fair warning for the listeners, not a lot to talk about, but we might as well cover the facts.
Yeah. So we're starting, and we learn right away Team Guido are more than 8 hours behind everybody else. And at this point, I don't think they'll be able to catch up. Yeah, and there's a little interview with Team Guido at the beginning saying that they don't think that it wasn't a fatal flaw that they made because they're still in the race. But honestly, like I don't think they could come back from this. They're an entire day behind everybody else.
Honestly, yeah. But and what's funny too is they being the editors include that little snippet at the start of the show, and we don't hear from Team Guido again till I want to say
30-minute mark ish.
I have a note that it says my note to myself was it's almost been a half hour into this 44-minute episode and we haven't seen the Guidos since that little snippet. So
Yeah.
we see them here and it's straight to Rob and Brennan who are in first and Frank and Margarita who are in second, correct?
Yes, yeah. Rob and Brennan leave at 10:12 a.m. from Tiger Cave Temple, and then Frank and Margarita leave at 11:06 a.m. So about an hour after Rob and Brennan.
What I did notice here is Rob, is just giving a very general start of the race interview or just single interview that's obviously been filmed after the leg is done. But he's sitting on a dock, like on a beach, obviously near their next pit stop, just looking like so chilled, so relaxed. Like he's obviously just been like swimming in the ocean
Yeah,
or whatever. And I'm like, what a place to do an interview.
yeah. He's just at a resort in Thailand with a drink in his hand, practically. Yeah.
Literally.
So they have to search for the king at Riley Beach. They have to do this by taking a taxi and then a boat. And then we
And
learn
there's no
here,
difficulty.
yeah, no difficulty. And we learn here that the beach closes at 5 p.m. and the Guidos don't start until 6 p.m. So we know right then and there that they're not going to be able to get there in time because obviously they're starting afterward. But there's a little moment where Margarita's reading the clue, saying like where they need to go. And then Frank's like, he says, "Don't talk. The Guidos could be sitting under the car." And he said it in like the most serious tone. It was like, what?
The race is all stakes in.
Yeah, like we
So
can
no,
risk anything.
all stakes. That's not a phrase. What am I trying to say there? All in. All in.
We're all in. Yeah, we're
Stakes are
not taking
high.
any risks. So, and then once they get there to the boat, after the boat, they have to hike up about a half a mile to the detour. And this hike, it wasn't like an easy hike. It was like fairly difficult, but I was wondering how the camera people were doing this with their giant cameras because there were parts where I think they had to like hold on to ropes to get themselves up on the hike.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's an easier path for the camera people to take.
Maybe it's completely restricted to them. Yeah.
But yeah, so the detour options, correct me if I'm wrong, are climb and hike, correct?
Yeah.
I will explain it in a second, but I want to know your thoughts. Because honestly, I feel like either option isn't bad. I think we would do, if it was you and me, we would do fine with either option.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think there's much to explain. It's like you either climb up a cliff face or you just hike up. But the climbing obviously is quicker. So I think, yeah, I would do climbing. I want to go climbing. It looked fun.
It looked fun, yeah. And again, we'll probably say this 100 times for this episode. There was no immense struggle from either team, really. There was no issues. They both Rob and Brennan and Frank and Margarita chose to climb, and they both succeeded.
Yeah. Margarita had a little bit of issues, but Frank was motivating her and maybe not the most helpful or motivating way, but she got through.
There was a great quote there where Frank says, like, come on, you're fine. It's just like climbing a tree. Like when you were a
Yeah.
kid. And Margarita just goes, I never climbed trees when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, that's not helpful. And Margarita also, in an interview at this during this part, she says where she talks about being the only woman left in the race, which I didn't think of, but I guess that is the case.
Yeah. Because you have four teams, eight guy or seven guys, and she's the only girl left.
So then after this detour, which everybody chooses to climb, yeah, they have to rappel down the cliff onto a boat into the water. Yeah, and then I have the note here. This is about where Kevin and Drew start the leg at 3 or 3 p.m. at about 20 minutes into the episode. So for the first 20 minutes of the episode, we're only seeing these two teams do these not mundane tasks, but not overly exciting.
It's not, well, I would say it's not overly exciting because neither team is struggling. They're
Yeah.
able to get through it, and also the editing pace is so slow, but that's due to the fact that you only have two teams to cover. So if you think about it, in 20 minutes, you're basically giving each team 10 minutes of screen time, more or less.
But yeah, which is a lot for two teams to carry. And especially
Yeah.
when a team like, I don't, Rob and Brennan aren't the most entertaining team on earth. Like, sure, they're good racers, but what honestly, what have they brought to the season, really, other than being good at the race?
I think that's their shtick is that they're usually at the front of the pack or
Yeah.
around.
I mean, Frank and Margarita, you have the relationship, but I mean, they've kind of worked it out at this point, more or less. So
Yeah.
at this point, there's not much character going on. It's just robots.
Yeah. I will say something, is it something that happens here, which was a little bit of excitement for the, well, excitement, that sounds rude. But Rob's knuckle, he crushes or like scrapes his
Oh yeah.
knuckle somehow on the rock face. And does he like, he doesn't dislocate the finger or something, but he really, it doesn't look good and is bleeding.
Yeah, I think he said he broke the knuckle, but I don't know about that.
Yeah. It
Um,
looks disgusting and they have to end up taping it when they're going to
yeah,
their, as they go to their next location. But there was that.
yeah. First injury for them, or for anybody, I guess. Has anybody gotten hurt?
Not notably enough that they've put it in the episode
Yeah.
yet.
First injury. There we go. Historical.
Yeah. So and basically they Robin, Brennan, and Frank and Margarita, pardon me, are almost wrapped up with this leg by the time Kevin and Drew start.
Yeah. And Kevin and Drew start, and I don't have any notes on them right now.
No, I have notes later on, but nothing now.
Yeah. Maybe should we just finish up the part one people and then move to part two? Okay.
I think that's easier, yeah.
Okay, so they have to go to Sealand and Trek after this, which is where they have their roadblock, which talks about upper body strength is the key or something like that. This is a ridiculous roadblock because all they have to do is kayak. And then
Well, it's supposed to be more challenging because the person who chooses to do the roadblock has to sit in the back of the kayak and paddle the weight of the other team member and their bags.
right.
But kayaking is pretty easy.
Yeah, they have to kayak to a cave and then find the clue there. And then the thing is, on the way back, either of the people on the team can kayak. So I think Rob and Brennan switched. So it wasn't even really a roadblock because they were both equally doing the same thing
Yeah.
work-wise. So then after they get their clue, they have to go somewhere near Chicken Island, where on a boat, where they have to direct the driver of the boat to find the route marker, and then they have to snorkel and dive down to grab their next clue.
And who was it? I just have a quote listed here, but I don't remember who said it. Because someone goes like, Chicken Island, where's Chicken Island? And someone else goes, right by Turkey Island.
I don't remember who that was, but maybe it was Kevin and Drew.
It sounds like a Kevin and Drew line, but I think it may have been Frank actually.
Oh, maybe. Sure.
Sure. But yes, so scuba. Well, it's not even really, it's snorkeling. It's not even diving, sorry.
Yeah. Well, they do have to dive down to the bottom, but
They do, but it's not scuba diving. It's just
right.
their little snorkels on.
Yeah. So yeah, we keep going. I just have a note that it's a very chill and laid back episode, and we lost all of the momentum we had last episode with all the excitement here.
I know.
Oh, and then I also had a note. I said it's somehow felt like when your community puts on like an Amazing Race event, this is what it would be.
Like it's just not the same stakes, but there's someone
Oh,
trying to make it feel that way, but it's just not being sold.
like there's just something off about this. It's like
That's
something.
because there were so little teams and just like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they then reach the pit stop, which is
Just
Paylong.
like they snorkel down, they grab the clue, they jump back into the boat, and then the boat just takes them to a beach that's like right there where
Yeah.
the pit stop is.
Yeah.
And Robert Brennan and Frank and Margarita come in like not even minutes within each other, very close
Yeah. Robin Brennan lost some ground here because they had issues
with their boat motor at one
with their
point.
the motor of their boat, and then at the beginning of the lake, they also had issues with their taxi or whatever, right? Or
Yeah, I believe
the
so.
transportation they were taking. Yeah.
My question originally, when they highlighted the motor of the boat stalling in the episode, I was wondering, oh, is this going to be accounted for as a production delay? But I guess it wasn't long enough of a delay to count as that.
And I don't think that would be a production delay. I think that's just like
The
something that's
nature of the
out of
game.
their hands. Yeah, because like if your taxi driver is slower in traffic or takes the wrong path, that's you don't get a time credit for that. If
Right,
the
right.
car breaks down or something. So yeah, so I don't think so. Okay, so that's it for part one.
And literally at this point, it's almost 30, like almost three-quarters of the way through the episode. And Kevin and Drew have started maybe a couple minutes ago, and we're finally seeing the Guidos also start.
Yeah. Yes.
And they run the same race we just outlined with the other two teams.
Yep. So Joe and Bill, yeah, they leave after the others check in, and they have to wait all night because the first place they have to go closes at 5 and they left at 6. So they have to wait all night until 8 a.m. to start the leg. So they just go to a hotel and stay the night.
There's also, is this where it's just shots of it like thundering and lightning and at night, and the weather just looks bad. And for me,
Yes,
like the
it
bad
is
weather seems like a bad omen.
could be.
I will add something here too, is what we forgot of when Kevin and Drew started, because the first clue says go to whatever the king on the beach, and one of them just goes, Elvis is gonna be there.
I do not recall that.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, Kevin and Drew, they do the climbing on the same day that they start, but by the time they get to the roadblock place is closed and they have to stay the night there. So they've made it about halfway through the leg before everything is shut down.
Yeah. Then the next day, basically, both teams are off to a start. The two remaining teams are off to the start, as the other two teams have been chilling on a beach somewhere, having
Yeah.
drinks, enjoying the ocean.
Yeah. And there was this scene where Kevin and Drew, when they're getting in for the night or whatever, they're like taking off their socks because they're like all wet because it was raining. And then one of them says like, "Oh, everybody's laughing at the stupid Americans." And then the other one says, "Actually, they're just laughing at you, not me. I fit right into the culture. I melt right in."
I will say it was just later on, like a couple minutes later as well. Their dynamic was really the only comedy in this episode too, because
Yeah.
when the two of them are in that kayak together,
Yes,
that was some comedy gold.
that was. There's a lot of talk about their weight this episode. They were really talking about their how heavy they were.
I don't think that was so much the issue as for me watching them in that kayak. I just thought that they looked like they were gonna flip it from the way that they were like
Yeah.
flailing around. Like neither had trust in the other. And they were just kind of mad at each other. And I thought the aggression of like them turning around to look at each other to talk was gonna flip the kayak.
No, I was also waiting for the flip, but it never happened.
I know. And that would be bad too, because their bags are in there
Their
too. And I
bags,
doubt
that
they're
would be
fully waterproof.
brutal. Yeah. But there was a comment somewhere, I think, where Kevin said that Drew is a Big Mac away from 260.
They're pretty ruthless with each
Yeah.
other.
But yeah, that's just the way they communicate. Honestly, I don't really have much else. When Joe and Bill get to the detour, one of them has slight issues with scaling the cliff, but they do ultimately do it. Oh, we do have a recurring side character here of a
We
blonde
do?
on the beach. She who
Yeah.
talks to both Kevin and Drew and Joe and Bill. She just seems
I
to hang.
wouldn't call her a recurring side character.
Well, she was a side character and she appeared more than once, so she recurred.
She appeared a whole 2 times.
She recurred. And I was just scrolling through the Amazing Race wiki summary for this episode, and they classified her as a Scandinavian tourist, and I was like, how do they know that?
Because they probably had to ask her to put her in the episode.
I guess so, but are the people who are writing the Amazing Race wiki the producers of the show?
No, but generally, do you know how to check the citations on Wiki?
Oh, I've never bothered to.
Oh, well, give me a second. I will do that. Okay.
Okay.
Where on earth did you see this?
Are you on Wikipedia?
Yeah.
No, this was the Amazing Race wiki. It's a different.
Oh, oh, it was the Wikia.
Well, I thought it was just called wiki. What's a wikia?
Wiki is Wikipedia. Wikia is like, how do I
Oh,
explain it?
oh,
Just different.
this is like the fandom page or whatever.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So yeah, if you just go to episodes and then
What?
10.
It's
uh,
called To the Physical and Mental Limit. It didn't feel that drastic.
yeah, I mean they gotta hype it up somehow. They only have one reference here,
Really?
which is the ratings of the episodes.
So it wasn't well, we don't know for sure if she was a Scandinavian tourist.
Yeah, who wrote this?
Anyone who has a wiki account,
Maybe they just said blonde woman, that must be Scandinavian. But
or they recognize the accent.
yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, if any listeners know who's in charge of this page, who wrote this, let us
We
know.
will. Andrew wants to have a word with you.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I literally don't have anything else for this episode. It was
I
enough.
don't. I mean, Kevin and Drew check in, and then at that point, you kind of have this feeling that the Guidos are going to get there, and it's going to be a non-elimination, and they do. And I feel like they're a little bit worried, but ultimately, I don't think they're super surprised that it's a non-elimination round.
Same reaction as the past two teams. It was just like, okay, great.
Cool. Let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah, that was this
Yeah,
episode. Total snooze fest.
we're really sorry. We can promise a bit more excitement for next week's episode. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say. If you want to reach out to us, email at amazingracerewind@gmail.com. Feel free to send a DM on Instagram or follow at Amazing Race Rewind. Yeah, Andrew, anything to add? Any final notes?
Yeah. Sorry if this was a little bit of a negative episode. Well, maybe some people they might like when we're a little bit more scathing, but who
I don't
knows?
think we were scathing though. I think we were just bored.
I mean, yeah. So yeah, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, give us a rating, help us out, share the podcast with a friend. And we'll see you next week for episode 11.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.